You meet. There we go.
All
There
right.
we go.
There
The
we
cat
go.
is super cute. I want to get a kitten. We have a huge dog, but he loves cats. So it's more my husband that's the problem. It's like, no, I want one dog less, not a cat more.
Yeah. But I love cats, but oh my God, they're just, they get into everything. They're so agile. It's like living with a little Olympian that can jump and get into everything. And he's so cute, but sometimes I'm like, why are you so much chaos? Like, why are you so crazy?
We have in the countryside with my parents in-law, they have two cats, and we have a Doberman, and he's like 50 kilo, like huge dog, and one of the cats loves him, so they're like best friends. The other one, I don't know why, like she just hates him, and like she would attack him and chase him in the garden like nothing. It's like it's a tiny cat, and there's that 50 kilo enormous black dog, and she just doesn't care. It's just like it's amazing.
Oh my
And
gosh,
yeah,
so
there you go.
funny.
Cats are like that.
Where are you based?
I'm in France. I'm in France.
Oh, okay. What part of France are you in?
In Nice.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Lost the other year.
I'm in Calabria, so we're in a very remote part of Italy because we're outside of the cities.
Nice. Oh, that can be bad. I was wondering because I saw you in California, and I was like, that's not an hour where she could be up in California.
No.
So, okay. All right.
No, it's a pain. I mean, we're based in Texas now, in Austin, and so it's actually only a 7-hour difference, which is 100 times easier than California. Like working in California is a pain in the butt. East Coast is 6 hours, that's fine, but 9 hours, no. I don't like having calls with West Coast personally, or living there anymore. It's just too much. It's hard to do business.
You prefer it where you are now?
Time zone wise, I think that East Coast or Central Time is the best, just because of only 6 or 7 hour difference. And then obviously for Italian business, it's 100 times easier for us to be here. But Giuseppe, my husband, is the one who's doing all of the Italian stuff, and then I deal with the Americans. But because we're based in Texas, like I was saying, in Austin, if someone there has a call at 9 a.m., it's 4 p.m. here, so it's not a problem. And I only take calls 2 days a week anyway, so it's like I have 3-hour windows, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
It's not any of this like 7 p.m. Like I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. Oops. All right.
And if in France, is it actually illegal? Like, I know they say like it's illegal to work after hours, but do people actually follow that law?
Well, the thing is, French people, they're not much into working. I was like, when there was the lockdowns and the pandemic, that's like jokes aside, they're just efficient, I guess. They get their work done quick, and then they're gone. And when there is the pandemic, the lockdowns, and everybody was like, the government is killing small business, we're locked down, we can't work, And so as soon as there was the decision to reopen businesses, I would have thought everybody's open like 7 a.m. until, nothing like that. Like you're walking around, it's 10 a.m. They're just starting to open. They're not happy if you walk in. They're like looking at you like, like, what are you doing here at 10 a.m.? It's like, what? Like there's people waiting in front of the shops, and they're like at 12 o'clock, they're like, we're closing for lunch, we'll be back at 2 p.m. Like, oh my God, like, weren't you saying, the government is killing small business? Like there's a row of people here wanting to buy stuff, and you're just gonna close for 2 hours? Like you can't, I don't know, like have somebody come in and change whilst you have lunch, and it's just like crazy. So yeah, after hours, it's not a thing.
Yeah, no, they just like, and it's the same thing in Italy. It's so funny, except the restaurants they do work, but Yeah, I
But
am
even that,
still.
even restaurants here, like like 9 o'clock in the evening, you walk past, they're starting to close, and I'm like, okay, because I have roots in the Ukraine and in Bulgaria, so like Eastern Europe, there's like 9 o'clock people go out. Like,
Yeah.
if you're going out for a late dinner and a drink, like that's just 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, you're starting. Like,
Yeah.
who's closing? It's crazy.
It's the same here. Like we don't have dinner till we eat dinner at 8, which is
Yeah.
very late. I prefer to eat earlier, but like, no, it's just not like how they do things. So that's crazy. But Europe is Europe. I love it. But sometimes I'm like, oh God, how do I do anything? This is so inefficient. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's the ups and downs of both sides. So, like, if you can take the best of everything, that's the way to go.
Yeah, the one thing the US that just kills me, it's the health insurance for people. I
Oh
will
my
never
God,
understand it. Just
so
ethically,
crazy.
like ethically, it's disgusting. As a human being, I'm like, this is not something only wealthy people or people like I shouldn't be like, I'm so grateful to afford health insurance. It's disgusting.
Yeah,
I'm so
absolutely.
ashamed of that. It's just absolutely disgusting. And so that's the one
It
major
is.
thing.
It is, and
It's
I
so
have to say,
wrong.
I found it absolutely shocking when I was growing up, because you always have that the US, it's like that great country, powerful democracy, everything, and you see that as you grow up as a kid, and then once you grow up a bit more and you start having friends around and conversations and looking at the news, and you're like, what? That
Yeah.
costs what? I get that for free here.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? And how is it exactly? It's not even a question of economics. It's not humane. It's
It's
just
not humane.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's not.
That's
Yeah.
the everything else for me aside from that. Of course we have our other issues, but like for me that's like the top. Like I cannot do that. It's just so wrong. And so that's why I am here. But of course Europe has its own like inefficiencies. Like for the US, like when it comes to like banking and businesses and small businesses, the US is the top. Like we can't, that's not even up for negotiation, because
Yeah.
everything's so easy and clear and the banks really protect the people. Like the bank works for me. I don't work for the bank. Like here, it's like I work for the bank and then I have to call the bank and they're like, why is she yelling at me? And I'm like, you work for me. Like, do not forget that.
I was like, whoa, the crazy American woman again.
And then I called Chase in the US, like JP Morgan. And they're like, good morning, ma'am. Oh, we are so sorry you're having trouble with this. We're going to get it fixed right away. And I'm like, yeah, you are going to get it fixed right away, because this is why I have my money in your bank. And if you don't, I will go to someone else. Do not forget that.
Yeah.
Anyway. Whenever you're ready to get started. I love talking about these things. I just have to, sometimes like I don't get to talk. A lot of people don't understand the duality, but it's funny because some things I'm just like, oh my God. And then other things I absolutely adore. So
Yeah. You have to have experience both to be able to appreciate like what you're saying. Yeah. All right, let's start. Cool. So yeah, tell me a little bit of a background about yourself and how you got into olive oil.
Yeah, so I actually did not have any intention of going into the olive oil industry or working in food at all. My background's in the design and architecture world. So I have a degree in architecture. I was pursuing a career to become a licensed architect in the US. I had taken an architecture internship in Barcelona. I was working at a really great firm in the Bay Area. I was on a very clear path to become an architect, I guess you could say. And I got sidetracked by my now husband. But before Giuseppe and I actually got married, that was what I was pursuing. But Giuseppe, my now husband, his background's in health and fitness and wellness. And his family's been making olive oil for almost 100 years.
Oh, wow.
And when we met in Rome in summer of 2014. We did long distance for a while, and then he eventually ended up moving to the US. And it was actually his idea to go into the olive oil industry. And I was very adamant about, no, I don't want to do that. I want to continue down the path of architecture. I want to become an architect, la di da da. Yeah, right. Like, let's see where that landed me. But I realized when I was working in it, I just really wasn't happy in the world of architecture, because I could see very clearly that in the next 10 years, I was not going to move up to the place that I wanted to be in. It's really hard to move up the ladder. And compared to other industries, the pay and the bump up within companies are not aligned at all. And it was frustrating to me, because I would go and work on like $10 million homes in San Francisco and then not get a pay that I thought was that I was worthy of. And then I also, of course, saw my friends working in tech, because the Bay Area is a global tech capital. And they were moving forward and just growing so much and learning so much. And I felt really, really stagnant, and like I was just going to be treading water for a really long time. And that wasn't worth it for me. I didn't want to dedicate 10 years of my life to basically end up, I don't know, being a manager at an architecture firm that wasn't even mine. I wanted something that I felt like I could take ownership of. And that's when I said, you know what, let me take a step back and see if making something would be really fulfilling to me. And I had a friend that owned a winery, and harvest was coming up. And I asked her, I said, hey, can I come work for you during fall harvest? And she said, yeah, absolutely, come work with me. And I told her the olive oil company idea that Giuseppe was pitching. And she was like, Skyler, you should really pursue that, because it could be really interesting and you don't know where it could take you. Making wine and making olive oil are very similar, but as I'm sure you're familiar with, but wine, there's not, with olive oil, there's no aging process. So the process is much shorter. And that's how I kind of got into the world of olive oil.
That's fun. Yeah, because I was wondering, like, not many people grow up thinking, oh, I'm gonna do that. and then like once you start looking into it, because I've obviously looked at your website and everything, that looks quite exciting and quite like a. And also, I love the way that you are making it exciting, actually, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, that's that thing, on the shelf, and they don't have that that connection, that idea. Like you mentioned wine. So most people have that idea of, the process, the story, with wine. And that might be just my experience, but I don't think a lot of people have that with olive oil. So in a way, you have to create that as you are getting them familiarized with your brand.
It's true. Olive oil is not sexy. We look at wine and it's so sexy. Yeah. It's something that we lust after. It's romanticized. You see, especially in movies, I mean, come on, that they're driving through on this romantic drive through the vineyards, and they're going tasting in the south of France. Like, you see that in a million American films. And it's a product that is very much romanticized. And it's interesting because olive oil is so similar, but it's just not as sexy. And the industry is also, it's been stagnant for a really, really long time. And it hasn't been covered as much in the media. Like, there's just not nearly as much attention on the product as there has been for wine. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. First, we have a tendency, like human beings have a tendency to put an emphasis on alcohol instead of non-alcoholic products. So it's an alcohol, it's sexier, like alcohol's hot, like that is something that's marketing. And then we also just haven't, and also alcohol is consumed, I guess, faster. Like a bottle of wine is consumed much faster than a bottle of olive oil. So the turnover of the product is much higher. Yeah. And it moves more quickly. People go through a case of wine much faster than they go through a case of olive oil.
But then on the bright side, I guess, you have launched in the right time, because now with the pandemic, I guess people are more aware of health. So there has been a spike in all sorts of health awareness and activities. So that must be a good time to be working on what you're working.
Absolutely. Extra virgin olive oil is the fastest growing cooking fat in the US right now.
Oh, wow.
which is of course good for us, but also I think Americans are just becoming more aware of cooking fats. And I say US because we are based in the United States. We're only shipping within the US. That's who we cater to exclusively at the moment. And yeah, so they're taking a lot more notice of the cooking fats available on the shelf, and they want to know what's in it, who's behind the brand. In the US supermarkets, I feel like we've gotten very pushed or gotten really far away from producers and understanding where our food comes from. It just kind of shows up on grocery shelves, and that can be really dangerous because we need to know where our food is coming from. We want to know who made this, where is it from, what's happening. The lack of transparency is just, it's concerning. And that's not something that I enjoy having in my food. And I think that people need to learn and deserve to know where their food comes from. And so that's another step that Giuseppe and I take very seriously with EXAU. It's just making sure that people understand what is extra virgin, what it's not, where it comes from, how it's made. And this is not just for our own benefit. Like, of course, it helps our brand, but it also just helps to educate consumers, because at the end of the day, that's our top priority. It's always educate and then sell oil.
Yeah. I think that with the new generation, I'm old enough to say that, the new generation. But no, I'm looking at my kids, and they are actually like much more, like, we learned, at least that's my experience, we learned to question ourselves or question what we're buying, and from, what is the brand, what does the brand stand for, does it really stand for that, or is just marketing, etc., etc. That's something that we've learned in our lifetime, whereas kids now, they're growing up with that as a given. And like, I have a soon 17-year-old in the house, and he, like, it's painful to go shopping with him because he's reading everything. Like, he's reading everything on the label, and he goes, that, oh yeah, that comes from whatever, and that's a bit questionable, and that's and it is painful, but it's a good thing. And it's when you think about it, it's logical. It should have always been like that.
Yeah. And it comes down to responsibility. I think that what are we calling them? Gen Z.
I'm gonna cut that bit out. We don't know.
The younger generation. They've done a really good job when it comes to taking responsibility with understanding and trying to find out what's happening in the world. And I feel like, I don't know, millennials, we got thrown into a very interesting time to become an adult. And we had to relearn a lot of things, or look at our parents and be like, I'm not doing that. That's not going to be my future. And now we're having kids, and we want our kids to grow up with things that we actually had to learn. So for them, it just becomes second nature. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a good thing. How did you come up with the name of the brand?
Yeah, so EXAU stands for Exaubis Olivis. And if you Google it, a bunch of olive oil brands come up. And so we shortened it just down to EXAU, but that's what it stands for. And it translates in Latin to white olive, or olive harvested white, which actually means olive harvested young. And so back in ancient times, when they were harvesting the olives, the green olives, the young olives, would be harvested first. And that oil was reserved for nobility. And so it was a noble oil. And so for us, EXAU represents the highest quality product that we're able to produce. And that's what our customers deserve to consume.
Okay, that's nice. And what was the process of, because we deal with naming, branding, and domain, so that's always an interesting question for me to ask. What was the process of getting the domain name? How did you select that one? The one
this is the thing that I love. The internet's so easy, right? Especially Google just makes things very easy. I purchased EXAUOliveOil.com. I tried to get EXAU.com, but it was impossible. Someone else had it. Actually, a French brand had it. And I was like, maybe I should write them. And then they went out of business, and I tried to find a domain, and now it's like it's very expensive. It's really hard to get. So I'm going to let that go for now. But yeah, it was really, really easy. Just a quick Google search, bought it. As far as registered trademark, because EXAU is a registered trademark in the US. So just know we are a registered trademark in case you get any sweet ideas. We are registered legally for